Hello, everyone. I see several of you have started to join, and so I want to welcome you to this webinar. And I want to, before we get started, I'd like to ask if you could go ahead and type in where you're from and also type in the grade of your teen. So I'm just waiting on a few responses. If you could go ahead and type it in. Just type in where you're from and also the grade level of your teen. Okay, so I see Cleveland, grade 11. Also, we have Chicago with grade 10, Atlanta with grade 10, Dallas with grade 11 also, and then Los Angeles with grade 10. I think there are a few more. So if you're just joining, if you could just type in where you're calling in from and also the grade of your teen. Okay. Cincinnati, grade 9 and 12. Okay. So we'll have something for everyone today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my screen off. So we also have a few more that came in. Fairfield, I think is that Fairfield, Connecticut, Fairfield, Ohio. So grade 11. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I will go ahead and turn off my camera and I will share my slides with you and then we'll get started. So thank you so very much for joining. So welcome to How to Help Your Teen Get In and Get Money for College. I'm Pamela Ellis, and thanks a lot for joining. I'll begin with just a few housekeeping tips because I want to make sure that you make the most of our time together. I want to start out by just asking if you could please turn off everything in the background, such as email or social media, and that way you can really focus your time here with the webinar. And then secondly, if you could silence your cell phones. I know how they can be really enticing at a time like this, but encourage you to really spend the time learning those things that can help support your teen with their success. You are welcome to type in questions in the box as I'm presenting, and I will try to answer those in real time. But keep in mind that we will also have a Q&A session at the end if you want to hold your questions till then. So before we dive into the content, I do want to take a quick poll. And with this poll, I'd just like to ask, what do you think are your teen's college prospects? So I'm going to launch the poll. And if you can just let me know if you think your teen's college prospects are that they will definitely get into their top choices, will probably get into their top choices, or will not get into their top choices. So if you could just make your selection and then we'll show the results. Okay, so I think there are a few more that still need to answer. And then I will close the poll to show the results. Okay. So I will go ahead and show the results of the poll. And no one seemed to think that their team will definitely get into their top choice college, but the majority said that they probably will. And 13% said that they think that they will not get into their top choices. I want to share with you an interesting survey result that came out, because what teens believe is that many of them believe that they'll definitely get in, and a strong 53% said that they will probably get into their top choice colleges, and only 5% thought that there was a chance that it wouldn't be as likely. And I think this is really interesting because, as you can see, even with our own brief poll, that there's usually a disconnect between what the teens believe and what we as parents may consider their options or probability to be. So there was an interesting quote that came from this study that I wanted to share. It says that students don't prioritize learning, but instead they focus on the end goal of college acceptance. What I'd like to add to that is a little bit different in terms of my experience and what I've seen with the hundreds of teens that I work with each year, is that it's not just that they don't prioritize learning, they don't prioritize the necessary actions that it takes to get into college. And instead, they focus on just what the end goal will be in terms of getting in. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go on. One of the things that I like you to just kind of answer is if you think this sounds like your teen, because they usually have some good reasons why they may not be taking the actions that they need to take in terms of college. So the first one is just that I'm too busy. So a lot of teens, if they're involved in any types of activities, whether it's sports or music or arts, they may feel that they're too busy to do the college thing, if you will. The second one, and this may sound like your teen, I got this. And I think we've heard this many times in different instances where teens may feel super confident that they're getting into their top choice college and that they're going to get big money to go, especially if they're gifted in athletics. They may feel like, I got this. The third one, and tell me if this sounds like your teen, I got time. And I think that sometimes teens may be the biggest procrastinators because oftentimes they feel like they may have a lot more time than they actually do. So does that one sound like your teen at all? But I have one more, and you can tell me if this one sounds like your teen. The fourth one is mommy or daddy will do it for me. Now, that's one that may resonate with some of you in terms of where your teen may be in terms of this whole college process and whether or not they're working on it. So I have just a quick poll again to ask you where you may be with that. And so what is it, which one sounded like your teen? Was it that they're too busy, they got this, they got plenty of time, or they're waiting on mommy or daddy to do it for them? Okay, I got a few more that are coming in. Okay, so I think there are a couple of more that still need to vote, but I have the majority of you, so I'm going to close the poll and share the results of that one. Most of you said that your teen, it sounds like, I got this. So they know that they're doing what they need to be doing and they're on the right track. So they got this. It's all in their hands. So, okay, interesting. And so we'll come back to that one as well. So we touched a little bit on your teen's mindset. And the truth of the matter is just that college costs are going up. And so the reality is that it can be really expensive to go to college. It's actually one of the most significant investments that a family will make. The second thing is that it's harder to get in. It's harder than it was 25 years ago or even 5 years ago for that matter. The volume of applications is much greater. The third factor is that it's more complicated. And as I talk a little bit about the process in my own discussion with you, you'll see that the whole college admissions process involves quite a few more steps than just filling out the application. And then the fourth reality is just that there isn't a lot of time. So as much as our teens may think that they have plenty of time to get everything done and to get into all of these colleges, they really don't have a lot of time to do that. And the college process can be rather unforgiving because it will keep moving even if our teens aren't doing anything. So one other finding from the Princeton Review study is that 64% of teens say that they can't get help from their parents. And perhaps you're on this call because maybe your teen may be part of that 64% group. But you realize that you do want to help your teens. So you want them to be part of the 36% that say that they can get help from their parents. Now, this statement really touched me personally because I think it speaks to my own experiences in the college admissions process and how I got to where I am today. So just let me share briefly with you my story of my own college admissions experience and how I got here. Now, as a teenager, I was part of that 64% because neither of my parents had gone to college, so they really couldn't help me. And then when it came time to apply to college, I wasn't sure of where I would get in or really sure what the process would be. So I applied to over 16 colleges by hand and on an old typewriter because I just wasn't sure, but I knew I desperately wanted to go. Now, I ended up going to Stanford, of all places, and back then it seemed like a world away from Memphis, Tennessee, where I grew up. And so my mom and I got on this old Greyhound bus and headed across the country from Memphis, Tennessee to Palo Alto, California. Now, when my mom was preparing to return home, she gave me a check for $70 to get through that first year. And to this day, all I know is that that $70 got me through those 4 years, but it was difficult. It was a humbling experience. And I had to work extremely hard in the classroom as well as I worked part-time jobs for 25 to 30 hours a week every year that I was there. But when I graduated from Stanford, I only had $10,000 in debt, which was back then a major feat, as in some cases it could be today. But after college, I went on to do the corporate thing and I worked at all these big companies. And all I know from working at the big companies is that I didn't like it one bit. It just wasn't a fit for me. And if any of you are in the corporate world and you love it, I think it's great. But I realized earlier on that it wasn't a fit for me. One thing that did happen while I was working in the corporate world, which really turned things around for me, was that I had my first child. And when I became a parent, things became a lot more serious in terms of what I was going to do and the vision that I had for my child in terms of getting educated and going to college. I didn't want my children to go through what I had gone through. And after my first child, I had a second. And I felt like, okay, I have two boys. And if you read anything in the media, you hear a lot about the schooling, particularly of African American boys. And so I was really in a panic state in terms of thinking, how am I going to school them? And then a few years later, I had a daughter. And so this became really complicated because, as you know, if you have a girl and a boy, they're different. And whether you have more than one child, you know that each is very different in terms of their personalities, in terms of their needs. But with having 3 kids and trying to figure out what it is that they needed to do to be successful in their schooling, I became obsessed with schooling, obsessed with figuring out all the different things that were going to help them with being successful. So I've done homeschooling, I've done private school, I've done public school, I've done boarding school, and I've done day school. You name it, I've done it. And I've done countless summer programs, all in trying to help them figure out what's going to work for them. But several years ago, some families asked me if I would work with them privately. And that's when it got even more serious, because not only was I supporting the education of my own children, but I also was supporting the lives of countless other families and working with those students day in and day out for their own success. So that really made a difference. And so I want to share with you some of my proudest results in terms of working with all of these students. A key result in terms of admissions is that 95% of our students have gotten into their top choice colleges. And these are colleges that range from your most selective, highly selective colleges to some of your more non-traditional, because I have worked with a wide range of student profiles and matched them with those colleges that are a great fit for them. Secondly, in our results, our students have received $40,000 to $130,000 in scholarship money. And this is money just from one school alone. And a lot of this is money that would have been left on the table had we not been working together. So these two results have been very important and special in terms of supporting other families and their college going needs. These results, as I, often will refer to them, have been a culmination of my program, which I refer to as the 5-phase Get In, Get Money program. Now, what these 5 phases include: one is the needs assessment phase, there is the list development phase, application and aid, transition to college, and network phase. So 5 phases. Now, I won't go into the detail of each, but I will talk a little bit more about these 2 key phases, the list development and the application and aid. So I want to talk a bit more about those 2 because they really speak to those phases that I work with students on in terms of getting in and getting money. And so I will be sharing some tips with you today related specifically to those in terms of getting in and getting money for college. Now, if you have your notes and you printed out the workbook, this is a great time to write in those things that are most important for your family and what your team needs to know in terms of getting in. Now, I will go through each in a bit of detail. And so I'm hoping that as I'm talking through it, there will be opportunities where you can glean some really good information that will be helpful to you. So here is the first tip in terms of getting in. So the first one that I'd like to share with you is that the teen is in charge. And I can't emphasize this enough, but I do know that this is one particular tip that can usually be very sensitive in your home. Because when you're looking at your teen sitting around playing video games or doing whatever they're doing, maybe they're texting or on Instagram, you can get really upset and wonder, why aren't they doing XYZ, and just do it for them. And I can tell you right now that the moment you intervene, that's when it's going to jeopardize their chances of getting in. And so at every point within the college process, the teen is the one that's in charge. That means that the teen is the one that contacts the colleges. It's not about mom or dad contacting the college on behalf of their teen, because again, that will jeopardize their chances of getting in. So the colleges always have to hear from the teen. And I know that this can be a bit scary at times for parents because they are not always sure of just how their teen is presenting themselves and if they're following through. But I want to share some specific things that I've done in terms of how I help my teens with staying in charge of the process. So the first one is that they set their own appointment schedule with me. So for teens that I'm working with privately, they keep their own calendar. I don't talk with their mom or dad about when they're available. The teen sets their schedule. And this is a way for them to take ownership, to make the time commitment involved in actually being engaged with the college process. The second one is that I have the teens what I call self RSVP for any campus visits. Now, what that means is that, particularly now for students who are juniors, and I know that several of you have juniors in high school, in the January, February timeframe, that's a time for your team to make reservations for any campus visits that they'll be doing this spring. Oftentimes, students are planning their visits for spring break or sometime in the uh, April, May timeframe. They may go on some weekend junior visit meetings, then those teams should be setting those visits up. So they should be the one to go online, make the reservation, and put in all the information. Yes, mom or dad can say this is the week that we can go, but it's up to the team to actually make those reservations. One of the things that happens is sometimes the login information that the teen will use to set up their campus visit will also become their login information for their application. And so it's really important that they take ownership of that and do it sooner in terms of making sure there is enough time to schedule it out. And when I'm working with teens privately, we will do this during our sessions together so that I can make sure that they understand how to use the website, what information is on there, etc. But it's important that they do it. The third one is pre-coaching. Now, what I mean for this is I actually will do some mock interviewing with students before they go on to campus. And this is a way that they can have the confidence and skills that they need to do well in those interview situations. The same for if they're planning anything out, we usually do some coaching beforehand. If they are putting together their activities resume to present to their teacher to get a recommendation, we review that beforehand just so that they feel confident in presenting that information. So that's what I mean in terms of pre-coaching. So it's all about making sure that the teen stays in charge of the process, that they are the one that's leading. And I often say to them, I may be coaching and guiding, but you're the one that's leading the process. And it's the same case if you're working with your teen one-on-one to help them through this process. They should be in charge and you're guiding and coaching. Now, the second tip in terms of getting in is that your teen is more than a test score. Now, this may sound pretty obvious, if you will, but here's what I mean by it, because I know that a lot of parents get stressed over test scores, and I see it every year in terms of parents concerned about whether or not their teen has a high score on the ACT or the SAT. Well, the colleges have what they refer to as a holistic admissions process. And what this means is that they look at a number of different factors about that teen in terms of determining admissions and how competitive they are vis-a-vis other students. And so students have a number of different options in terms of how they can present themselves other than just their test score. Sure, if your teen is interested in a highly selective school, then they do need to be in a certain range in order to really be admissible, because those schools are thinking, well, that's an indication in terms of how well they could perform here. And so they need to be in a range in terms of where other students are who do well at that school. But if your teen doesn't test well or they don't want to submit their scores, there are a number of other options that they have in terms of perhaps presenting a portfolio of creative work, or maybe they can submit additional essays. There are other options in terms of just submitting their test scores. And that's one thing that I want parents to be very much aware of, because testing tends to be a very just a very sensitive topic in terms of how well their children perform on standardized tests. Now, I want to share with you some tips in terms of how I work with teens who may not test well. One of the things is that there is a website called fairtest.org. And fairtest.org lists about 1,000 colleges in the US that are colleges that are test optional. And so there's a range of them, from those that you have probably heard of and some that you may not have heard of before. But certainly they range in different sizes in different locales, but a lot of colleges that are considered test optional. Even for Goucher, I think it is, which is just outside DC in the Maryland area, you can send in a video. You don't have to send in any test scores. For a college like Wake Forest in North Carolina, you can submit additional essays, and they do have quite a few essays that you have to write, but no test score is required. So there are a number of options out there for test optional schools. The second one, there's a wonderful book called Colleges That Change Lives. It's been around for a number of years, but the colleges that are listed in there are colleges that look beyond just your test scores. And they really offer a lot of different opportunities for students in terms of an experience with faculty, maybe specialized academic areas. And most of the colleges do have a smaller learning environment, which a number of students could be well suited for. So that's a book that I will refer students to. This third one is something that you can possibly do in your own area. And what I do is I actually scout other programs. And what that is simply is I will travel to other cities where they have a particular program that matches with the student's high school needs, and look at just how they are supporting students with colleges and which colleges accept those students. And so that's a way to get some information around supporting your particular teen's needs. And I can give you a specific example. So I have a number of students that I'm working with this year who have ADHD. And so what I did was I visited some schools that specialize in working with students who have ADHD. And these schools were in the Massachusetts area, and there are a number of them in that region. That's all they do. And there are some that support students specifically with dyslexia. And so then I can use that information in terms of how I craft my students' list, in terms of what are those other opportunities in terms of supporting them with getting in that don't necessarily relate to their test scores, because in some cases their test scores haven't been as competitive, if you will, as some of the other students. So those are three very specific things that can be done in terms of getting around the test score, and when that's a barrier in terms of admissions. Now, the third tip that I want to share in terms of getting in, and this one is a little bit more complicated in terms of how it works, but I'll explain it a little bit more. So for this one, I call it find the hook and not the ball. Now, what I mean by that is you will hear a lot of people saying the way to get in is to be well-rounded. And so I will meet parents who have, students in middle school, students in high school, where their teen is dabbling in a little bit of everything. They spend an hour on this, an hour on that, an hour on something else. But I can tell you right now that when it comes to getting in, your teen should have a demonstration of a strong interest. And don't use the word passion, because passion may sound too strong for a teenager, and I don't want them to get unnerved by it at all. But I talk about having a strong interest, and that strong interest is what's their hook. And so it's really not about doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but it's about what is that, one or two things that you really enjoy doing, and how is it that you're demonstrating your interest and spending your effort in those areas. That's what's important. Now, I will share with you a student of mine. This is Matthew that you see on the screen. Matthew was an amazing golfer. He was a lacrosse player. He was involved in student government. He was popular. He was well liked. He had this strong activities resume. So just a great kid all around. But to be more competitive vis-a-vis his peers, because he was applying to a good range of colleges in terms of selectivity, what we worked on and the way I positioned Matthew's application was to focus on his interest in chemistry. And that was his hook that he used for all of his applications. And I'll share with you more about Matthew's application and how he was able to not only get in, but also get significant money because of his hook. So I'm going to move on from there and talk more about how to get money for college. So the first one that I will share with you is applying early. Now, this may seem obvious to some, but a lot of times what I find is that parents will say, well, we'll look for money in senior year. And I'll tell you right now that if you start looking for money in senior year, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late, and a lot of the money will be gone, particularly if you're looking for any outside scholarships. The time to start looking, and this may surprise some of you, is as early as age 13. And a lot of you may not be aware, but there are scholarships that you can start applying to as early as age 13. And they are scholarships that range in a number of areas. Many of them that I see in the younger grades are for community service. So if your teen is involved in any type of volunteer work, there's a number of scholarships that are offered for those teens. And so applying early is very important. The other advantage to applying early is that it really gives your teen a chance to see how competitive their application is for these scholarship dollars. And that can be very informative in terms of getting money for college. Now, the second way, and actually I'll talk about a second and third way in terms of really getting big money for college. The first one I'll talk about is the list. There's a lot of big money in the list that your teen has. And this one isn't so obvious, so I will elaborate a little bit more on it. So what I mean by this is that your teen's list should be a mix of those colleges that are a great fit academically, meaning that it offers the right academic experience in terms of majors, in terms of teaching style, all of that. It should be a good fit socially. So if your teen is looking for Greek life, or if they just want a campus that has good food and good dorms, that social fit is very important. So you want the academic and the social fit to be there. But a third area that we often don't hear about is the financial fit. Now, the financial fit refers to those colleges that want to give money to your teen. And I will discuss Matthew again as I talk about this. So Matthew, in terms of his list, so remember I said earlier that we focused on his hook being chemistry. We didn't look at the lacrosse and golf thing because he wasn't interested in really playing either sport in college, and he wasn't really good enough to be in a D1 program, but we focused on the chemistry as his hook. And so what we did was to seek out those colleges that would offer scholarship money for him to study chemistry. And so that was the financial fit. The other thing about it is that Matthew could have gone in the direction of chemical engineering. And a lot of times, engineering students may spend an additional year. And so there were also colleges on his list that offered a fifth year for free. And that's a great way to save money, is if you can get that fifth year of a master's program completely paid for. And so that's how we focused on the dollars that he could get based on his list. Generally, the majority of the money that your teen will get for college will come directly from the colleges. It won't be from the federal government in most cases, like some you know, people may think, but the money generally will come directly from the colleges. So that's a really important way to think about how to get really big money for college. The other way to get really big money, and this is where I'll talk about Matthew again in terms of what he did with his list. The other big way is the essays. Now, this is going to be either good news or bad news for some of you, because if your teen is very strong in their writing, then that's great news. Because there are a lot of essays that are often required for college in terms of admissions and also for scholarships. And so the essays are very important. I stress that teens start developing their writing skills as early as they can, and especially prior to high school. And I say this because most high schools do not teach writing. The writing instruction usually ends around middle school, and by the time you get to high school, they assume that you already know how to write. And so there aren't a lot of schools, high schools at least, that will have formal writing programs. And so it's really important, though, for teens to develop those writing skills when it comes to getting money for college. Now, if your teen isn't a strong writer, then I would certainly encourage them to seek a tutor or perhaps do extra journaling, and especially if there's any reading that they can do outside reading. So not just reading for school, but reading for pleasure. That will also help with their writing skills. Now, I will mention this next opportunity in terms of writing. So let me go back for a moment because I was talking about essays and I want to share something related to Matthew. So with all of his essays that he wrote, he actually only wrote about chemistry. And we spent a lot of time with these essays, but given that that was his hook and he had a list in terms of those schools that would offer money, they also had additional scholarships that were offered. And for several of the scholarships, you had to write essays. And in his essays, he wrote about chemistry. One of his essays that was actually one of my favorites, it was listing your top 10 lists. And I think this was Wake Forest College. They just said top 10 list. That was the essay prompt. And his top 10 was different chemical elements. And so that one was a really fun essay that he wrote. It wasn't very long, but it was just all of these different chemical elements. So really, really important to have strong writing skills. Now, this next one, this fourth and final one that I'll mention in terms of getting money is one that I call mix it up. Now, what I mean by this is simply that most parents, what I will see is that they will go online and they will look at the sticker prices for what the colleges are. And they'll say, oh, this one is 20, this one is 40, this one is 60. So just only apply to the less expensive ones, generally the ones that are public. But here's what I'll say to that. You should have a mix. Your teen should have a mix of public and private colleges. And I see this every year. What happens is that when students apply to the public colleges, what they get is very little scholarship money. And so if you see on that college website that it's $30,000 to go, it really will be $30,000. For the private colleges, they may have a sticker price online that says $60,000, but they do a lot more discounting and they're able to offer more scholarships through their endowment that that far offsets that price that you see online. So I have a student who actually had applied to UT Austin, and then she also applied to a couple of really selective private colleges. It was less expensive for her to go to the private colleges in the Northeast than to go to UT Austin. UT Austin offered her $600. I mean, what can you really do with $600? I mean, that just means that it essentially was more expensive for her to go there than to leave the state and go to a private college that offered her far more than $600. And I see it every year that students get a lot more from the private. So definitely having that mix of both the private and the public really makes a difference in terms of admissions and getting money for college. Now, I want to just ask this, as I've covered a lot in terms of points, tips that you can use as far as getting in and getting money. Now, how confident do you feel in terms of helping your teen? And this kind of harkens back to what I had asked earlier in terms of whether you feel like you can definitely help your teen, you could probably help your teen, or maybe not so at all. I think that, there's a bit of a range in terms of thinking about how to absorb all of the information that I shared and how you can make it actionable. So I won't do a poll right now because we're getting short on time, but I want to share with you some areas where I see parents getting stuck in terms of helping their teen with the college admissions process. One is having reliable information. There are countless websites out there, but you have to know that not all of them can be trusted in terms of information. And then the other one is that I hear a lot of parents relying on hearsay in terms of college admissions. So again, having reliable information can be a place where you can get stuck in terms of really supporting your teen's success with getting in and getting money for college. A second area where parents may sometimes get stuck is with resources and tools. And these are all the things that you need to, help your teen, having a stock of interview questions, having a template or checklist that they can use, having a database of information. That's a place where parents may get stuck in terms of helping. And then a third area is just the time. It's a really big time commitment in terms of helping your teen with the college admissions process. And one of the things I'll say about that is oftentimes I find that parents may not be able to make the time or really say that they don't have the time because they feel overwhelmed by what they need to get done. And so it's certainly the case that time can be a factor. So I want to share something with you that is really exciting before we get to the Q&A. And it really discusses something that my team and I are really excited about in terms of sharing with you. We have just launched a new online workshop. It's called College 101, Get In, Get Money. And this workshop really answers all of those areas where parents may get stuck in terms of helping their teen with the college admissions process. And so I'm just going to go through briefly with you just what's included in it. And it's a 5-week program that's only an hour a week. But in module 1 is the planning process, where we talk about what are those things that your teen needs to do even before they get to the whole college process, and really what does the roadmap for your teen look like in terms of getting into college. In module 2, we'll talk about laying the foundation. So what assessments and interest inventories does your teen need to take? We'll also talk about testing those SATs, the SAT 1 and 2, the ACT, as well as advanced placement, or IB if your teen is involved in an international baccalaureate program. We'll talk about those things in terms of laying the foundation and how they make a difference in terms of getting in and getting money for college. In the third module, that will be selecting the right college. And this is where we will spend some time talking about those campus visits, those interview questions, and all the things that they need to do in terms of putting their list together and having the right mix of colleges on their list. In the fourth module, we're going to talk about applying from the admissions officer seat. Now, this is going to be a really good one because you'll get to see just what your teen's application looks like vis-a-vis other candidates in their class, whether it's in the class of 2017 or the class of 2018, how competitive they are. And oftentimes when you're working alone in terms of helping your teen with the college admissions process, you really don't know what other applicants look like and what their portfolio is in terms of what they're admitting, how they're getting admitted. And so this is an opportunity to really see that and understand how that makes a difference for your team. And then the fifth module, the fifth and final module, we'll talk about unpacking your financial profile and affordability. Now, all of the other 4 modules lead up to this one because so much of getting in and getting money is integrated. So it's a really exciting workshop that I just can't wait to deliver. It's going to start, I'll give you a few of the goodies on it. It's going to start on January 5th, but I will share with you that there are a couple of really exciting bonuses for anyone who signs up by January 1st, this Friday. And the first bonus that you will get if you sign up by then is a 45-minute coaching session. This is valued at $225. And in this coaching session, I will meet one-on-one with you before the class starts on January 5th. And it's a time to really talk about your teen and put some strategies together around how you can get the most out of the workshop. So we will really talk specifics about your teen in this 45-minute coaching session. The second bonus, if you sign up by January 1st, is a summer program list. Now, this takes a lot of time to do, and if you have a sophomore or a junior who is looking to do anything next summer, or maybe they're not looking to do anything next summer, but they need to, this will be a list of programs that they can apply to for the summer of 2016. And this is valued at $350. So this is another great bonus for anyone who signs up by January 1st. So really 2 good bonuses in terms of signing up. Now, here are the nitty gritty in terms of the course. It will start on January 5th, so that's just a week from today. It's 5 weeks and it's 1 hour a week. So you'll get a chance to discover how your teen measures up among other peers. You'll also understand what it takes for your teen to get in, how to get money, and certainly develop your own financial profile to determine your affordability. So it's going to be a really exciting 5-week program that you can definitely, it's not going to take a whole lot of time to do, but it's going to save you tons of time on the back end when it comes to supporting your team with getting in and getting money for college. Now, you have some questions in terms of the value and the investment, what it's going to cost. So the value of the program is $2,400 just for the workshop. And what the investment is going to be, The investment to participate in this workshop is $297. Again, with the value of $2,400. Now, there is a VIP course edition, and what that is that with the VIP edition, you will get 4 additional coaching sessions, and those will happen in between the workshop. And so, for example, the workshop starts on the 5th, and between the 5th and the 12th, we will meet one-on-one to talk about your teen and how you apply what we've covered that week. And so this will again be a chance for you to not only participate in the course week to week, but also get some very specific strategies for your teen and what their needs are. And that is valued at $3,600 for that additional one-on-one coaching time that you will get. So I know I've covered a lot of information in terms of going through some really good tips that you can use, and then also talking about this exciting new program that my team and I have designed just to support parents in terms of helping their teen with getting in and getting money for college. Now, I want to hear from you in terms of questions that you may have. I set the clock at 15 minutes, and I know that that will run us over by 5 minutes, but I'm certainly willing to stay on to answer questions that you may have about helping your teen, questions about the course. So just you can type them in to the question box, and I will be waiting to hear what you have to ask about. Okay. So I do have a question. This one is from Los Angeles, a question on writing. And so it's what do I need to do in terms of helping my teen be a better writer, because he is not a strong writer. And that's from Amy in Los Angeles. So there are a few key things that I suggest in terms of improving writing skills. And I know that's something that's top of mind for parents, is that their teen is not as strong of a writer. And I would suggest, first of all, seeking out a writing tutor. And this would be someone that your son would work with one-on-one in terms of what his specific needs are, whether they are, paragraph structure, or if it's word choice or overall organization, whatever it is, getting some private one-on-one help. That's something that I've found to really make a difference in terms of improving teens' writing skills. Another one, which isn't often so obvious that I share, is doing more outside reading. I can't stress that enough. For all of my teens that I'm working with privately, I talked with them earlier this month about reading a book over the Christmas holiday break, because all of them will be home. Some of them will maybe traveling on airplanes, and that's a good time to catch up on reading. And so I will be definitely talking with them next week about, what did you read? What book did you finish over the Christmas holiday break? And so that's really important in terms of developing those strong writing skills that students need. So those are 2 key ones that I would suggest. So another one, this is from Emily. She says, with the applications that you recommend starting at age 13, are these for college scholarships funds that are held until they go to college? And are there many of these available? So Emily, yes and yes. So yes, they do hold the money till then in terms of for scholarships for college. And the beauty is that with these scholarships, where they can start applying as early as age 13, it can apply to any college. So it doesn't matter if your son or daughter decides to attend a public, a private, a small, a large, that money will go to them for that particular college. So it's completely college agnostic. The other thing is that, yes, there are many of them that are available. I see a number of them that are in the community service area. So if your son or daughter is involved in any type of community service, there will be scholarships for that. Now, some of these scholarships usually range from 500 to about 5,000 in terms of the award value, but still that's great. And it's just, extra in terms of what you will get from the colleges themselves. And also too, a number of them will require some type of writing. And so whether your son or daughter is a good writer, I would definitely make sure that they, you know, use this as a way to develop their writing skills further. So thanks a lot for asking about that. I have another question from Mina. It says, do colleges really take into account the high school profile during admissions review? Yes, they do, Mina. And where I see this happening is that I have a student right now who's in a pretty good suburban school district. And even though it's a pretty good district, none of the students, other alums from his high school, have gotten into some of the selective colleges that he's interested in applying to. And that may hurt him a little bit in terms of admissions. And so the high school profile does matter, because what the colleges are looking for is that they want to see that that student will be able to compete with other students that are being admitted to that college. And if they don't have any other students from that high school, how can they really know? So it can really make a difference in terms of how that's written. And I know for some high schools, they may write a profile that says that most of the students don't go to a four-year college. And then that may not look so favorable. You also asked, is there a value to going to a rigorous college prep school and getting lower grades versus a less rigorous school? And yes, I do see that. In terms of students that are in top high schools, they may be not as strong in terms of their GPA, but because of the school that they go to and the fact that the colleges know that it's a strong high school, their chances are better than some students who may be at a urban public high school that isn't known to be rigorous. And those students may have, 5.0s, but it's just really not considered as strong. So yes and yes on both of those. I have a question here from Keith. He asked about the money back guarantee, and this is for the 101 workshop. And yes, there is a money back guarantee. And so basically, Keith, if you participate in the workshop and you say, I didn't get anything out of this, I have, done this and that, and I didn't get anything out of it, you get your $297 back. Simple as that. Or if you did the $497, you get your $497 back. It's really meant to be tailored to supporting your son or daughter with the process and really making a difference for them in terms of getting in and getting money for college. One of the things in terms of the guarantee is, it's there because I have done this workshop before and I know that there's value in it. I know it works. And so I wanted to make a difference for other families as well. So that's how it would work. Any other questions that anyone has? Well, we're right at the top of the hour, and I really appreciate your time. I will, there's another question that I just got. It says, how much data and input will I need from my team to maximize the workshop experience? This one, Keith, might be a little bit tougher to answer because you will have to get some input from your team. So I can give you what the activities resume template is in the workshop, for example. But if your team doesn't follow through with putting that activities resume together, then that won't that won't be of help. And so there's definitely going to have to be some input from the teen in terms of getting the most out of the workshop. And, that one I said at the outset was a little bit tougher to answer because I will be frank in saying that I work with some teens that are just outright lazy. And at the same time that they may be lazy, I can't do the work for them. I mean, not only would it go against my own professional ethic, but it wouldn't help them get in if I did the work for them. And so I don't, say to parents to do the work for their teen. And so the things that your teen has to do, it's going to require their input. So I can, share with you in the workshop that your teen needs to call the college to talk with them about XYZ. Or maybe if your teen is on a wait list, here's what the email should look like. But your team will be the one to actually send that email, to make that call to the college. It's not something that you can do for your team. You can help, but you can't do the work for them. And so there will definitely have to be some input. Now, as far as data for putting together the summer college recommendation list, there is some information that you have to have for your teen, but you can pretty much do that survey, if you will, and get a great list without a lot of quote unquote data from them. But you will need input from them when it comes to the actual admissions process. And you will have all the tools and resources that you need to really support your team, but they will have to do the work. Any others? Any other questions? So this has been a really great group. I appreciate all of your questions. I appreciate your attention. And I thank you so much for joining me today on this call, especially during the holiday season. I was a little bit nervous at first when I set it up, thinking that perhaps I would be here by myself. But I am glad you joined, and I will certainly look forward to your further participation. I will be sharing with you a replay that you can watch over the next couple of days, and certainly hope that some of you will also plan to join me in the workshop that starts next Tuesday, January the 5th. So take care. You're welcome. You're welcome. Mina, Keith, Kim, and Greg, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much, and take care.